All right, this is going to be very interesting. We're going all the way across the ocean now, and we're going to speak with somebody named Adair Butchins, and I hope I'm not butchering Mr. Butchins' name. A former Merchant Navy officer and Bomber Command navigator, Adair Butchins obtained a DPHIL in astrophysics from Oxford University before working at the University of London Observatory at Mill Hill, where, get this, he wrote the software for the Tycho project carried on the Hipparcos, I think is, satellite of the European Space Agency. He also spent some time in industry as principal engineer in the Advanced Systems Study Group at Racal Avionics. He returned a lecture in aeronautics at London Guildhall University. Now he's retired. He's been an avid student of religion and philosophy all his life. His book, The Numinous Legacy, contains a wide-ranging and well-considered series of reflections on the big questions of human existence, relating scientific views on cosmology, life, and consciousness. Aha, right down our alley, consciousness. The conundrums of existence, ancient philosophy, and both Eastern and Western religious viewpoints. It gives a thoughtful yet concise exposition of this range of important issues presented in an open and dispassionate manner. So we reach all the way across the ocean to, I'm not really sure where. Adair, welcome to the program.
Oh, hello. Yes, I'm in London.
You're in London. Okay. Yeah. How's the weather?
The weather is absolutely wonderful today. I think it's going to go up into the 80s. Oh,
really?
Yeah.
Usually when people in London say it's wonderful, that means it's foggy. And that's wonderful weather. So the 80s, all right. Anyway, great to have you on the program.
Thank you.
I guess the place to begin is with your book and telling us what it means. What does it mean?
Well,
The Numinous Legacy. Where did the title come from?
Well, numinous, as I've got in my glossary, means awe-inspiring or a sense of the divine. And the book is basically about how modern cosmology affects religion. And all religions, but particularly the three monotheistic religions. These are the three religions we know best. That's Judaism, which is the oldest, Christianity, and Islam.
Well, usually it offends them. In the case of Christianity, most of what's learned in cosmology seems to offend Christians, right? I mean, after all, when the universe began scientifically versus when God pointed the finger and said, begin, let there be light, right?
Yes, but not all Christians are offended. The Quakers and the Anabaptists seem to take it all in their stride, but I think there are certain creationists that tend to look over modern cosmology and regard it as something that shouldn't be believed.
Believe me, Adair, I've interviewed a large number of them. We'll be right back. So anyway, so you're trying to reconcile. Do you find more areas where religion and cosmology are able to be reconciled, or more areas where they are not?
Well, the serious scholar has only three choices, really, to either reconcile, reject religion, or reject science. And most Christian apologists, anyway, accept the first option. And this is very difficult, because it requires the denial of what is known as the Copernican principle.
Which is?
Now, the Copernican principle is very interesting. It basically says that there is nothing special about us or our place in the universe.
I buy that as one possibility.
And it is sometimes known as the principle of mediocrity. It was first postulated in the 16th century by a gentleman called Giordano Bruno.
You mean so we're here as a matter of mediocrity, just simply occurring.
Yes, we're absolutely, we're typical. We're not special.
Uh-huh.
That is the Copernican principle.
Mm.
Now,
I bet it's not real popular.
well, it's not popular, but it's popular among scientists. Einstein used it, and he called it the cosmological principle. In other words, wherever you are in the universe, when you look out on the large scale, things will look more or less the same. Bruno postulated it from a child when he played in the orchards and wonderful, luxurious vines on Mount Vesuvius. And when he went to Mount Cicada, he looked back and saw that the mountain looked quite barren because it was a long way away. Mm-hmm. And when he went to the other mountain, the other one looked barren. And so he decided that things are not always what they seem, but on the large scale, things can look the same from different positions. And he postulated that for the whole universe. And Einstein took it up when he got his relativity and his cosmology and called it the cosmological principle, that wherever you are in the universe, when you look out on a large scale, everything is the same. And, of course, that has now been added to, because not does everything look the same, everything more or less is. All the stars are made of the same elements.
Well, then, an extension of all this would obviously be that mediocrity is a common thing, and so that all of those stars we know all of those planets going around those stars, there's almost got to be all kinds of mediocre occurrences that just spread life, mediocre as it may be, from here to there and everywhere you can see in the sky, just about.
Yes, this is the whole point that makes it very difficult for the three monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, because they were formulated before before Copernicus decided that we went round the sun, and the sun didn't go around us. When those religions were formulated, we were the center of the universe, and man was the whole reason for the universe's existence.
Well, within those religions, that remains true.
Yes, with those religions it remains true, but with modern cosmology, we've now discovered that the universe is most probably infinite, and there must be a lot of intelligent life in the universe.
What makes us think the universe is, that's a very interesting subject, infinite? Why do you say that? How do we know it's infinite? Maybe it's a big circle. Maybe there's a brick wall out there somewhere. We don't know, right?
Well, we've got a pretty good idea, actually.
Oh, do we? Let's hear it.
Well, what we have to do to find out if the universe is infinite, we have to look at Einstein's general theory of relativity. Mm-hmm. Now, if you remember, he was saying that matter has energy, E equals mc squared, which is where we get the atomic bomb from.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
But according to his general theory, matter will deform space.
Yes.
And space decides the path that matter can take. So it's like a feedback.
Okay.
So if there is enough matter density in the universe, then space will take the form of an ellipsoid. And we then say the universe is closed. In this case, the universe will be finite but unbounded, like the surface of a balloon. It's finite, but there's no boundary. And eventually...
Okay, so the universe then is feedback, and feedback by its nature is infinite?
Well, this is what I'm coming to.
Is that fair?
Well, yes, but I must explain that the expansion, that the universe is undergoing expansion, it will then eventually collapse. The universe will end in a big crunch, similar to the way it started.
Well, there's another beauty. How in the world do we know that?
Well, this is what we're trying to discover. if there's not enough matter, density matter, to close the universe, the geometry of space will not become like an ellipsoid. It will take on the shape of an hyperboloid. In other words, it's like a saddle. It will curve outwards, and the universe will be infinite and expand forever.
Well, that's an extremely interesting theory, but you see, we are now accelerating. And if one postulates that we began with a big bang, that was insufficient, a big bang,
yes,
then everything is blown outwards, and like any explosion, the acceleration of particles, or us, would begin to be less, not more. And yet scientists now, cosmologists, are finding that things are accelerating away from each other to the degree that we'll be all alone someday. I mean, virtually all alone. At least that's what I've been hearing of late, that we could be sort of out here by ourselves and virtually wouldn't even see many stars in the sky because they'll all be gone.
Yes, well, now, to do that, you have to do quite a lot of observing and find out whether the universe had enough matter or not. What we have to do is plot the magnitudes of galaxies of the same brightness against their distance.
Mm-hmm.
And the resultant curve can tell us the shape of space. But the problem is, it was almost impossible to find galaxies of similar intrinsic brightness. How do you know? But these latest observations that you've just mentioned used supernovas, which are calculated do have the same brightness. And as you say, the results seem to show that the expansion of the universe is speeding up.
Well, how do you square that with the old rubber band theory, which is what you were giving us a little while ago, that it eventually will all collapse back in on itself?
Well, it won't. This is what we've now discovered.
Oh.
This was the big problem we were trying to discover. But all the observations so far seem to say that that will not happen. What will happen is the universe will expand forever. And this seems to have been, you can use other methods as well, galaxy counts at different distances, an examination of the size of very small distortions in the microwave background, which I'll explain later. And all these seem to indicate that the universe is infinite and expanding. And then, of course, according to scientists generally, the chances of intelligent life developing on planets like ours is very, very small. But if you have a vast number of events, then even very, very small probabilities can get an awful lot of results.
Well, yes, the numbers grow rather large,
Yes.
Considering the totality of the numbers, yes.
Even the universe that we can observe. Now, we can only observe the universe for the last approximately 15 billion years that light has been traveling. According to the Hubble Space Telescope, there are something like 50 billion galaxies, each galaxy with approximately, say, an average of 200 billion stars. And that's just the universe we could, in principle or in theory, observe.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives an awful lot of cases. And so even an extremely rare case of the...
even if it's extremely rare, there's still vast mediocrity scattered out there, right?
That's right. And if the universe is infinite, the universe does seem to be infinite, there will in fact be an infinite number. As long as the probability is not zero, there will be an infinite number.
Well, there has to be. If it goes on for infinity, then there has to be an infinite number of things filling it.
Providing the probability is not zero. Well, it can't be zero, otherwise we wouldn't be here.
No, it's not zero. We can observe that it is not zero.
Yes. And this is a very interesting point, because the religions now, the sort of basis of the religions, for instance, the idea of, in Christianity, the incarnation and redemption, if it's only going to be for us, it makes God rather local. And in Judaism, the idea that the Jews are the one most important race chosen especially by God seems to fall out of the system as well. Islam as well have the same legends of heaven and hell and all the rest of it, and that doesn't seem to tie in either with all these with an infinite universe. So we're left with not theism, not so much the religion. We're left with whether this whole universe was constructed by God, whether it just started on its own, or whether there's some other explanation.
I've always rather lived with the thought that it could be both, that it was a natural process guided by the Lord's hand. And in that way, I just get cherry pick and be happy. In other words, whether it was a lightning bolt hitting the muck that caused something that became us finally to crawl from it, or whether it's God's hand that pointed the lightning, I can live with them together, those possibilities.
Yes, but the thing is that there are a big argument for the case of a God, a deism.
Yes.
Is the fact that there are very, very special factors in the universe that seem to point to the formation of life in the universe.
I thought it was mediocre.
The life is common, but you could not get life in the universe unless certain conditions were fulfilled. There has to be certain. One has to have carbon made in the center of stars, because without carbon, there is no life. Now, many of the laws of physics make life possible under the right conditions.
Yes.
And then there are the initial conditions.
But going back to where you said that it's so common, at least numerically, it's going to be so common as to be mediocre. I'm getting lost a little bit. So we'll take a break here and we'll come back confused. That's what I am. Adair Butchins is my guest all the way from London. And at the beginning of the program, he seemed to be making the case that, we are what there is. That's all there is, folks. We're fairly common, even mediocre, and life is fairly common and mediocre, and there's probably quite a bit of it out there. And then he hits me with, but then the case for the maker. There's a case for God. There is a case for God amongst all of this seemingly contradictory theory. I'm tempted to ask you, Adair, what your religious preferences are, but you know what? I'd rather just listen to you and try to figure it out myself. And I haven't yet. That's pretty interesting. I can't figure out where you're coming from. But you say there's a case for the maker, a case for God.
Yes, I've got, in my book, there are two cases. There are the scientific arguments for the existence of God and the scientific arguments against the existence of God.
Yes, really?
Now, the arguments for is basically the argument from design. Now, this relies upon the fact that the laws of physics are such as to make the formation of life possible under the right conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And there are conditions obtaining at the time of the Big Bang to consider.
Mm-hmm.
Many very special factors are necessary for the formation of life. The slight excess of matter over antimatter at the beginning, and otherwise there would be nothing. And when the universe was very, very hot, the background temperature was over 1 billion degrees, we had to have the formation of helium and hydrogen, which needs exactly 11 minutes for the temperature to drop from 6 billion to 1 billion degrees. Carbon is the basis of organic life, and that has to form in the interior of stars. So its energy level must be very close to the average energy found at the center of a hot star. There are many other very, very precise conditions necessary for the formation of life in the universe. And so the argument rests upon the question, could the universe have been different? Why do gravity and electricity obey a square law when it could have been the cube law, and so on?
Basically, it's all just so wonderful that God had to have done it.
this is basically the argument from design, yes. It's also...
But it's also the hole in the argument at the same time, isn't it? Because it could be just simply our perception that all is so wonderful that it just had to have been God. Well, maybe, I live in a state, Nevada, where you have gambling, right? Well, every now and then somebody trots in, drops a coin in a machine, and hits megabucks. It happens.
Yes.
So,
well, you have now got very, very astutely onto the scientific arguments against the existence of God.
Oh, yes.
And that is based upon what is known as a many worlds theory. Many cosmologists claim we're in a universe that is only one of a vast or even an infinite series of universes.
Mm-hmm.
And with such a series, there must be some that have the right conditions for life to form, like your gambler that wins the jackpot.
Yeah, sure.
And we happen to be living in one of them.
Yes. But we just look around us and we say, holy mackerel, everything had to be exactly so or we wouldn't be here. Well, right.
Yes.
Yeah, but somebody hit megabucks, so it could be that. Do you have, maybe I should ask now, do you subscribe to one theory or the other, personally, or does it matter?
Well, my own theory, my own condition is I think there's definitely a system at work. Whether you want to call it a god or whether there's an intelligence or anything behind, I'm not sure. But I definitely think there is a system that seems to operate to make the universe as it is. I can't be very much more definite than that because I'm not all that definite myself about it. But
okay.
I do believe that the laws of physics are paramount and they cannot be changed. And I believe the universe is orderly. I don't think that suddenly gravity will be reversed and we'll all fly off the world, or that the speed of light will change, or anything like that. We can't prove it won't.
Let's see. There is one condition that could begin to do that sort of thing. If the ever-expanding universe instead began to snap back like a rubber band, then you would be rather surprised at the backwards things that would begin to occur. People would be falling up, and all kinds of water would be coming out of glasses, and it would be a terrible world.
Yes, but we wouldn't survive because the contracting universe would have far too much radiation.
Well, yeah, it would kill us, of course, so we wouldn't get to see it. But we speculate here about what would happen, right, if it began to snap back. But you don't think that's going to happen?
No. The other argument is the argument for the creation, for the existence of a God, is the argument from ethics. The universal nature of ethics give them an objective structure that can only be the result of planned creativity. In my book, I have there are letters at the end from various religious authorities, and Rabbi Rayner writes, I think that genuine ethical principles are by definition universal.
They appear to be, don't they?
Yes. And he said if it was alleged that in some other world there operates an ethical code by which falsehood is preferable to truth, hatred to love, contempt for life to respect, etc., he would reject that allegation. So the best arguments for this are in George Ellis and Nancy Murphy's book, The Moral Nature of the Universe. So this is the ethical argument for the existence of the deity.
And fair enough, I guess.
The argument
again, though, the other side is right there. It's hanging right there. You can go off the other side of the cliff just as easily.
Yes, because there's such a thing as social biology, which attempts to explain morality in evolutionary terms. It's an attempt to show that ethics can be entirely reduced to the biological level.
Absolutely. Just a normal evolutionary course of events, and a society that wants to evolve and wants to improve would have to act. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
But I have come to the conclusion that although that there's quite a lot in my book about this and how it has come to be biologically based, but it has developed as an emergent property into something much greater. Although it doesn't necessarily imply the existence of a deity, it does come become much greater, become something more than just a biological reciprocal function. And there's a lot in my book about this, and I think that is quite interesting.
Well, how then are we to understand, if there is God, why he casts down upon us viruses, germs, illness, death, destruction, tragedy that seems to have no explanation, leaves fathers and mothers screaming there cannot be a God for this to happen, that sort of thing?
Yes, why did God make germs?
Yeah.
Yes, well, that is interesting because, again, the three great monotheistic religions are not only pre-Copernican, they're also pre-bacterial. When these religions were formed, nobody knew anything about germs. Diseases and such were thought to be the wrath of God for doing things that you shouldn't have done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But of course, I think certainly for the Jews, for the progressive Jews anyway, I think the Holocaust sort of hit that argument off the end. I mean, 1 million children were murdered by the Nazis under the age of 5. What could they have done wrong?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So, go ahead. Lay an answer on us. In other words, whether it be that or whether it be the loss of a child that a parent can't explain and denies the existence of God because it just can't be so. And it could not be a God who would be so...
Yes. Well, I personally consider if there is a God, I don't really believe in this loving God that interferes in the universe all the time. Mm-hmm. I think that a God is more like the God of Aristotle, if such a God exists, because it is a God that is way transcendent, way above us. He is completely indifferent to the universe. You may not even know it exists.
Why would a God be so indifferent to a universe? I mean, that's like saying a mother would be indifferent to the fate of her child, is it not? Or are we just thinking, again, somehow on the wrong scale? I mean, our Creator would be, in essence, our Father, yes?
Well...
Or only us mere humans, mediocre humans, would think that way, I guess, huh?
Yes, but it seems that any evidence for the intervention of God in the universe, as far as we can see, is non-existent. If God does exist, he doesn't interfere. In fact, considerations could support the theistic argument, but it seems to rule out the concept of a resurrection in a new earth and a new heaven.
It would seem.
Because the arbitrary changes in the laws of physics and biology for the bodily resurrection of the dead completely contradict the idea of an orderly universe.
It certainly does. In fact, actually, in the Bible, there would be nothing but one contradiction following another. I'm sure as you sit down and read it and consider all you have just said, you just run into one contradiction after another, don't you?
That's right.
In other words, we have a God who created us and didn't care and doesn't care now. But gee whiz, look at all these specific things that were said indicating he is a loving, caring, at times intervening God who will bring us all from the grave one day, and so forth and so on, right?
Yes. I personally don't believe that.
Mm-hmm.
I would concede the scientific basis of morality. I think it's possible to extend the principle to all values postulated in the Platonic intersecting non-physical universe. In other words, the same ethical and aesthetic values in their broadest sense will prevail throughout the physical universe wherever free-willed intelligent beings exist. I find the final step towards a divine presence possible but difficult. It's much easier to consider it in pantheistic terms. In other words, that the universe in some way is God, than in the interventionist concept of the main religions.
Perhaps closer to what Native Americans believe with regard to Mother Earth.
Yes, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
You write about a final fireball or the universal heat death. What in the world do you mean by that? Because according to what I've been listening to, well, that sounds an awful lot like, well, I don't know, the collapse of the universe, perhaps, or the Big Bang in reverse, and yet you suggested that won't occur.
Well, the thing is that we've mentioned the fact that the universe seems to be expanding forever. So
we did, yeah.
It doesn't seem that we're going to have the big crunch or the big fireball. That has been mentioned as a way of ending the sort of universe and reconciling it to religion. But according to religion, it's not just that. It's supposed to be us only. We're supposed to, the earth is supposed to change, and we are all, the dead are supposed to raise themselves, and it seems that it's not really a very good analogy, not really. Now, the universal heat death means that as the universe expands, what happens is that disorder increases. Now, this is the result.
Did you say disorder increases?
Yes.
Disorder increases.
Disorder increases. This is the result of what is known as the second law of thermodynamics.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a gentleman called Carnot introduced the laws of thermodynamics as a way of working out how steam engines work.
Yes. Do you now see in the world, collectively, disorder on the increase?
Well, in the universe, particularly, let's say just the world, but in the whole universe, as the universe expands, it gets cooler.
Correct.
Right? And as it gets cooler, motion tends to stop. And eventually, the background temperature is now about 3 degrees Kelvin, 3 degrees above absolute zero. As the universe expands, things will get cooler and cooler. All the stars will radiate. Everything will just stop. And in the end, there'll be nothing left but black holes, black dwarfs. There will be no life, no stars, nothing.
Yes.
Just a complete, endless vista of
nothing.
Dead stars.
No. Virtually nothing, though. I mean,
that is called the heat death.
That is called the heat death?
Yes, that's what it... I know it sounds like the cold death to me.
Why not the cold death?
Because I don't know why I haven't christened it the cold. That's what I would christen it, but it seems to be that it's referred to as the universal heat death.
Huh.
Or I would say the universal lack of heat death.
Who comes up with this stuff? If indeed we are going to be all alone, no stars, virtually the stars disappearing in the sky, and Earth here, but all alone and cold, heat death. I mean, where'd that come from?
I'm not sure who christened it. I think what it meant was the lack of heat death. But that is basically what the idea is. This will happen to the universe.
And what about the concept of the steady state universe? That is to say that there was not a Big Bang because there never was a Big Bang because everything's always been here.
Yes, that is very interesting theory, but I'm afraid that it's...
doesn't hold water?
It doesn't really hold water.
Scientifically.
Right, just hang on a minute. What happens is that this was a position formulated by Hoyle, the late Fred Hoyle,
yes,
and Narliker and Gold. And their idea was that there was a continuous creation of matter. In other words, hydrogen atoms. And this continuous creation of matter went to make up stars and went to make up galaxies.
All right, hold that note. We have to we have a continuous occurrence of the need to take a break. So once again, here from London is Adair, and we're talking about the steady state universe theory, virtually suggesting that everything's always been here, always will be here. There was no beginning, there will be no end. It's just always been and always will be, right?
Yeah. The consensus of astronomers measures time from the Big Bang. But the dissident voices of Fred Hoyle, Gold, Bondi, and Narlica postulate a steady-state theory that advocates the eternal existence of the universe without beginning or end. There are some good reasons, observational evidence, which provides strong reason for discounting such a theory. Mm-hmm. The evidence is that the universe, observationally, was different in the past. This takes the form, firstly, of radio telescope observations. When we look at distant objects in the universe, we are, in fact, looking backwards in time, mm-hmm. because of the finite speed of light. The more distant the object is measured by the redshift, the further back in time we see it. Now, if the steady-state theory were true, then the past would look exactly like the present. As far as these radio observations are concerned...
Unless there's a constant oscillation of some sort going on. I mean, after all, our observations are very macro indeed in terms of the totality of time. They're very macro indeed. So what if we're observing some simple oscillation that's a part of a bigger oscillation that's never ending? Yeah.
But that isn't the theory of the steady-state theorem, is that everything should, what is called the perfect cosmological principle, in which everything should be the same all the time. As far as their theory goes, these continuous creation of matter would carry on at exactly the same rate all the time. Mm-hmm. It seems that the universe was much more congested in the past.
Yes, indeed. Things are changing, but as I explained, it doesn't totally rule out the steady-state theory. I mean, there could be oscillations within oscillations and
yes.
and so forth. That
is interesting because it brings us to the theory of inflation. That was a very interesting point. If you want me to go on about inflation, because that does give some kind of oscillation, and it brings us back to the steady-state theorem, but in a completely different way.
You seem to be describing all of these theories very elegantly, but I haven't yet reached and understood why you wrote about them all, what point you're trying to make, or what you personally believe, or what you were trying to drive home with the book that you wrote. What conclusions were you coming to?
Well, I've come to the conclusion that there is no evidence at all for any intervention in the universe by God.
Really?
Yes.
So he's there, but he's not paying attention.
Well, if he is there, he's not. He may not be there, of course.
So then, even if the ultimate peril came to mankind and we faced extinction, he might be at the movies.
Possibly, yes.
Uh-huh. All right.
That's a possibility.
All right. When we're looking at all of this and the various religions, I note here that you feel, apparently, that Islam is less affected by modern cosmology than are either Judaism or Christianity. Why do you feel that way?
Well, basically, Islam, the fundamentalist Islam, is
yes.
just as much affected by modern cosmology as the other two monotheistic religions. But that Islam can be much more transcendental than many of the other religions. The fundamental beliefs, of course, are affected, as I've said. But apart from its fundamentalist aspect, Islam does not have the same literal interpretation of events that we find in Christianity or Judaism. Obviously, the fundamentalists do, and that's where they get their terrorists from. But there are sophisticated arguments that involve special pleading that the accounts of Judgment Day, the joys of paradise, and terrors of hell are not meant to be interpreted literally, but as expressions of some higher reality transcending the world, which is a fascinating argument, but still leaves us with the belief in the intervention of God in human history, the giving of the Quran itself, for instance.
Yes, good example.
But it doesn't negate the Copernican principle, and it's at odds with the idea of modern science, which doesn't agree with intervention. So, although the Copernican principle invalidates Islamic fundamentalism, the mystical element, orthodox insistence on fundamentals, in effect, this eliminates the idea of a personal God and brings in the conception of God as transcendent.
Well, what elements of Islam, the non-fundamentalist version, support this? What would you cite?
Well, for instance, they're quite happy to concede that if there are other planets with life on them, there would be other prophets. Unlike Christianity, in which Jesus Christ is the one and only incarnation of God.
Yes, good point.
And it's also interesting that in Islam, in ancient days, the religion of Islam says you must look for evidence and find reasons. And so they weren't antithetical to science. They liked science, and they did a lot of science originally, which is where we get a lot of our, for instance, algebra was formed by the Arabs. And a lot of science was brought forward by the Arabs because they were told in their religion that they must look for reasons and evidence. Whereas the early Christians were told that as shortly there's going to be the end of the world, don't waste your time trying to find reasons for things. Just attend to your religion. So that's one of the reasons why the Islam is less affected by modern cosmology, although certainly the fundamentalist part of it is.
Interesting. All right. Let me ask you about something that's very close to my center of wonderment in this universe, and that's about consciousness.
Oh, yes.
We were talking about consciousness in the first hour, a little bit, and I heard somebody come in this program, and I don't recall who, and it doesn't matter, in the last week or so or something or another, said animals have no soul. Now that's perhaps a little bit of a leap from a discussion of consciousness, but let's, or maybe it isn't, I'm not sure. Define for me what you believe consciousness to be.
Well, first of all, we could understand the universe, well, it would be able to understand the universe much better if there wasn't such a thing as consciousness. The stars would shine, and all the laws of physics would take place, and everything would happen without any life or consciousness, and it would be much easier to understand. The only problem, of course, is that we wouldn't be here to understand it. So consciousness is the most amazing thing.
Define consciousness for me. What is consciousness, Adair?
Well, this is the subject of many arguments. What is consciousness?
Is it self-awareness? In other words...
well, that's part of it. But what we have here is we have various schools of thought. Now, one school of thought... You
are a presenter of various schools of thought, aren't you?
Yeah. You want to know what I think?
Yeah, sure. What do you think consciousness is?
Well, I think consciousness has arisen from what I consider to be a parallel universe.
Really?
Now, yes, I consider there to be a parallel universe which has a boundary or an intersection with our universe. Now, the physical universe, with its atoms and its protons and its various, and its stars and all the laws of physics, is intersected by a parallel universe which has ethics and mathematics and aesthetics, and it's intersected through consciousness throughout the universe. This is what I think.
That there is a universal consciousness. You think there is a consciousness beyond the individual self-awareness. You think there is a greater collective consciousness.
Well, I think that there certainly could be. And I think that
I do too.
I mean, we know that mathematics is something beyond ourselves, because certain aspects of mathematics have been discovered before their actual practical applications. For instance, if you take a cone and cut it in various ways, if you cut it horizontally straight, it divides it into a circle. Do you see what I mean?
Yes.
And if you cut it one way, you get straight lines. You cut it another way, you get a different... This was discovered by Apollonius, I think, in about 300 BC or something. And it's only lately we've discovered that these sections not only describe the various orbits that comets and planets and stars make, it also describes a lot of the electrical theory as well. Now, Apollonius didn't know that when he was investigating conic sections. And so it seems that mathematics is definitely something beyond us. It's not something that we've invented. And I'd say that is part of the evidence that there is some kind of Platonic universe intersecting through consciousness, where all the things that we think of, like beauty and love and compassion and justice and so on, exist. And we live.
Adair, do you imagine that consciousness could be a force, that a directed consciousness could in fact be a force in the universe, that if many minds wished for something to occur, that it might occur?
I wouldn't think so. I mean, if you take two people that want something to occur, it's no more likely to occur than if one person wants it. The same as you take 10
Well, all right.
people.
Here's something then for you to chew over. You are aware, no doubt, of the academic institution called Princeton, right?
Yes. Yes.
Princeton is doing a series of experiments now in which they have taken what they call eggs. Now, these eggs really are computers.
Yes.
And they generate random numbers. And these eggs are located geographically all around the world, in major cities and capitals and all around the world.
Yes.
And they just sit out there spitting out random numbers. But Princeton, a number of years ago, began, and all of these eggs report back to the big egg at Princeton. And they began looking at a correlation between these eggs suddenly reporting a non-random a response from the computers in certain areas and corresponding world events. For example, when 9/11 occurred, the Twin Towers came down and off the charts. These computers that were spitting out random numbers began to get more and more less and less random, if you'll pardon me. In other words, something happened when major world events occur. There is some sort of effect on these eggs or computers, if you will, and then to the master computer. In other words, they're registering these incredibly large world events. Now, what do you suppose they might be measuring, Adair?
Well, it completely baffles me, because I don't see how there can be any actual connection.
Yes, but there seems to be, and they've got quite a bit of history now with this, watching the 9/11 event, but that was just the most recent stunning example. Other large events have been also registered, and so there's some collective force out there, obviously acting on these random number generators and causing a change.
Well, I also have the theory that there's no such thing as random.
Oh, well, that may be so. I don't know. I'm just.
When you think you're generating random numbers, you're not.
You're not.
And it may have something to do with that. I can't explain that. But as far as actual consciousness is concerned, that I can explain the various theories that people have. But it is very strange because when you think of it, if you read stories about statues in a story, you have a statue, then the statue suddenly comes to life. Well, we all think, this is just a story. But in fact, if you go over about 3 or 4 billion years, it's true, because here you have a universe with completely non-conscious elements, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and so on, hydrogen, and you put them all together, and suddenly you're finding a living person with the sense of identity who can think. How on earth can these conscious thoughts arise from non-conscious material? That is the real question.
Well, then based on most of what I think I've heard you say, wouldn't prayer, praying to God, wouldn't that be more or less a total waste of time, Adair?
Yes, I don't think, even Rabbi Rayner doesn't seem to think that petitioner...
I don't know who Rabbi Rayner is, but you agree with that, then?
Yes, except, of course, when you come to... sometimes people think of meditation as a form of prayer. And I think meditation can help one's mental state.
Well, that's self-help.
Yes.
Adair, that's self-help. That's not same as, please save my baby, and then God intervening, save your baby. It's not the same thing, right?
No, because the whole of evolution depends upon cruelty and agony, really, doesn't it?
They're going to think you're a real heretic. You know what? They really are. Listen, hold on. We're at a break point here. That's all right. They can think that of you. They thought that of many of my guests. That's all right. Good morning. I'm Art Bell. Here for George, who's taken a couple of days off. He can use them. We'll be right back. Throughout this interview, I've been listening carefully to Adair and trying to discern, actually, where he was coming from. Very difficult in the beginning because he was just sort of a presenter of alternative theories, but now I think I'm beginning now to grasp where he is coming from and why he wrote this book and what he's trying to suggest, which is a little heretical, I'm sure, but that's okay. As a matter of fact, this next question really is going to fit right in, I think. And but why don't I confirm my theory? Really, Adair, as I listen to you, it seems to me that you were being very almost politically careful in what you were saying to us, when really you were trying to suggest that this is what you believe. It may not agree with a lot of religions, but it's what you were trying to prove and carry us along with you toward believing this, that there is indeed perhaps a God, but that he's non-interventionist totally, to the point that we could destroy ourselves and he wouldn't even notice. That's really your theory of our creator and creation. Is that kind of the bottom line?
Well, that is what I think is possible. In fact, I wouldn't even call it. I would call it a system.
A system. For example, you believe that the creator or our creator could be a super civilization, an alien race. It could be another mediocre, perhaps grown a little better society somewhere that created us rather than the God force itself. Yes?
Well, that's interesting. It's not actually something that I believe, but it's a theory that I've read, and I find it quite interesting.
Well, it's because it fits in with what I think you do believe, right? The
paper actually was written by Edward R. Harrison of the University of Massachusetts. He addresses a connection between black holes and intelligent life. He proposes that our universe was created by superior intelligences existing in another physical universe, in which the constants of physics are finely tuned and therefore essentially similar to our own.
Now, why would we suppose that physics would be a constant in another universe? Certainly we know they are, or believe them to be, in this universe. But in another universe, we could have a completely separate law of physics, could we not?
But physics has to be fine-tuned for life to exist. So any universe...
Well, our life, yes. Yes, Adair, our life. As we discussed earlier, our life is either real lucky that it's just right for us, or we're here because of that random fact.
Yes, based upon carbon.
Yes, but perhaps in an alternate universe, there's some slugs moving about that have developed some form of intelligence and function within this other law of physics, just spiffy.
Yes, that's an interesting point, but that isn't the theory that Harrison has written. Harrison assumes that life is like, and the reason is that these people in this other physical universe, which are like our own, very similar to our own physics, have actually created our universe and other universes to be like their own, so that other people could arise in them. Now, it seems more like science fiction than science, but it is published in the Quarterly Journal of the Royal Astronomical Society, and so it's obviously taken seriously by its editors and referees. Harrison gives a short description of the fundamental constants of physics and some examples of how only slight variations could rule out development of life. He then examines the concept that such an intricate network of interlocking critical relations appears to be evidence that the universe has been designed at a fundamental, not superficial physical level for the benefit of our organic life. This would point to deliberate creation. Now, he explores the possibility of creating a universe spanning 100 billion light years containing billions of galaxies. And he quotes some work by some scientists, Fari and Guth, who consider how one day it may be possible to form a small black hole of about 10 kilograms mass. Now, you know, a black hole is something so dense that even light can't escape.
You know, they're actually working on that right now, Adair.
Yes, and anything that gets anywhere near it is sucked into it. So how they could do it in the laboratory, I haven't the faintest idea. But he says by careful arrangement, this black hole has an interior that inflates, not in our universe, but in a re-entrant bubble-like space-time that is connected to our universe by an umbilical cord originating from the black hole. And the black hole evaporates and severs the link with the new universe. This new universe will inherit the same constants of the parent universe, and another life-bearing universe comes into being. Harrison considers that beings of our limited intelligence can dream up wild and implausible schemes for making universes, then beings of a much higher developed intelligence might actually possess the technique for achieving it. This also explains why man is able to comprehend the universe. He was deliberately programmed to do so, not by a supreme being, but by a supreme civilization whose intelligence is far in excess of his own.
Do they care about us?
Now, I personally don't believe that.
Oh, you don't? Okay, well, again, you are a great presenter of theories.
Yes.
And I'm most curious what you do believe. In other words, the purpose behind the book that you have written. Surely, in the presentation of these various theories, you have come to some conclusions, have you not, that you present the reader with?
Yes. So I'll tell you what conclusions I've come to. And the conclusions I've come to is my own view, as I said before, is first of all that the universe is orderly. Events occur according to the laws of physics and mathematics. As I said, we cannot prove tomorrow gravitational attraction will not suddenly change or the speed of light will change. I do not believe that the universe is arbitrary. I believe it follows rules and it's orderly. Now, this consideration could support an argument for God, but it seems to rule out the concept of the resurrection, a new earth and a new heaven, as a specific event in space-time rather than transcendent imagery. As I said, the arbitrary changes in the laws of physics and biology necessary for bodily resurrection of the dead contradict the idea of an orderly physical universe.
Again, you seem to allow for the the evidence of a creator, but one that doesn't care.
Yes. However, with modern technology, we could introduce a messianic age of peace and plenty now if we effected the necessary sociological transformation.
Oh, yes, but the very thing that generally gets away, prevents that process from continuing, or the road peace being paved, I don't know how you want to look at it, are the very religions that we've been discussing.
Yes, precisely. I mean, when you think...
Putting our cards on the table.
When you think of how much money has been spent and how much and how many resources have been exhausted in the 50-year battle between the Jews and the Arabs in the Middle East.
Yes.
If that money had been spent on social welfare, they could all be living like movie stars.
As you look at the present situation in the world, from any point you wish, ecologically, socially, from a religious point of view, political point of view, our behavior, whatever it is you want to look at right now, when you look at the totality of things the way they are right now, do you think we're going to go down that little golden path you just talked about? Or do you rather think that, we're going to come to a heat death?
I'm afraid I'm not an optimist. I know most Americans are optimists and like optimists, but I'm personally not really so much of an optimist. I don't think we are. What is the future of humanity? We could meet our end before the demise of planet Earth in various ways. For a start, it could be a drastic change in the atmosphere or climate. The greenhouse effect could make the Earth uninhabitable for oxygen-breathing creatures. Other alternatives are a deadly plague, which spares no one, a thermonuclear conflict, destruction by an alien invasion, very unlikely.
Nevertheless, let us count the ways.
None of these last three possibilities seems likely. Even the worst plagues find some resistance. And although an atomic war could have terrible consequences, it wouldn't kill everybody.
Why not to rule out the possibility of an engineered little killer virus of some sort that would be effective, more effective than those which die of their own accord?
That's possible. And I don't think there'll be an alien, although dear to the hearts of UFO spotters, an alien invasion could only be launched from within our own galaxy, and as we've seen...
Oh, well, now, while we're on the subject of UFOs, let's stop for a second. I saw one. I really saw one, Adair, close up. A big triangle, moving, not flying, floating, not flying, Adair. I saw this. My wife saw it. It was close up. I could have thrown a rock at the damn thing if I hadn't been in shock. I saw one of these. Now, they are something. They are not nothing. I saw this with my own eye. There's no question. It wasn't foggy, wasn't blurry, it was perfectly clear. And without gravity, it floated right above my head and then on out across the valley in which I live now. These things are real. There's something out there. What do you make of all these UFO reports?
Well, I don't know because I've never seen one, but a UFO is just an unidentified flying object.
Right.
Which is perfectly normal. What I don't believe is, I don't believe they're really from an alien civilization.
Why is that? Why is it not possible that somebody who was some race that was originally just another mediocre bunch of protoplasm running about got a little better than mediocre and made it here?
Well, I'm not saying it's impossible, right?
Okay.
I'm saying it is possible, but I would have thought it was extremely unlikely because the sparseness of intelligent life in the universe. But of course, there's nothing to say that rotatings. Now, I've got the paper here. In my book, I've mentioned a paper submitted to the observatory. Now, that's the Journal of the Royal Astronomical Society in 1991 by someone called Duncan Steele. It described a 10-meter object designated 1991 VG,
Yeah.
on a heliocentric orbit, an orbit round the Sun, that made its closest approach to Earth in December 1991. Jim Scotty discovered it with the Spacewatch telescope at Kitt Peak on the 6th of November 1991. Its very Earth-like orbit and rapid brightness fluctuations argued for it being an artificial body rather than an asteroid. None of the handful of man-made rocket bodies left in heliocentric orbits during the space age had purely gravitational orbits returning to Earth at that time. In addition, the close distance observed may be interpreted as a controlled rather than a random encounter with Earth. It could therefore be argued that 1991 VG is a candidate for an alien probe observed in the vicinity of our planet.
And when was this?
Sorry?
When was this that Kitt Peak observed this?
6th of November 1991.
1991. Now, you know, that's a new one on me. I had never heard this, Adair. And what, pray tell, did Kitt Peak do with this observation? Did they call other observatories, confirm it?
Well, they published it in the Journal of the Royal Astronomical Society.
And how was that greeted?
And it's read by scientists.
Yeah, I understand. That's why I ask. How was that greeted? Was there great excitement? My God, they are here, or what?
No, I don't think. Everybody just read it and said, "Oh, how interesting," and that was about it. The paper investigates the different probabilities of the nature of this object.
You gotta love our scientists.
Seems that the probability that it is returning man-made rocket or spacecraft is extremely low. So it's possible. Similarly, the probability of being a natural asteroid is also low. So the paper concludes that the observations provide prima facie evidence that it is a candidate alien artifact. The alternative explanations, that it was a peculiar asteroid or a man-made body, are both estimated to be unlikely, but require further investigation.
Well, gee, that's quite a statement to make, isn't it?
Yes.
In other words, they're saying, more or less, this was probably an alien probe or a spacecraft. It's not a natural thing. It's not an asteroid.
That's
we
right.
here at Kitt Peak believe that we've seen a spacecraft. I mean, let's get right down to it. That's what they're saying.
If it was a return man-made rocket, it was very much a fluke that was observed. And the normal progress of science requires we consider the possibility of some other origin. And the next near passage is calculated to be in 2041.
I see, so it's going to be a while before we get another look.
Yes, and I won't be around, I'm afraid. But, yes, I think that is very interesting. But no, there was no great excitement about it.
Should it come by again, which you say it will in 2041, and the world, based on what you just read, focuses all of the large telescopes upon it, and we do decide, wow, this is not from Earth, it is alien, and it's real. Just as a matter of curiosity, Adair, how do you think the human race will react to such news? Do you think people go, oh well, or ho hum, or oh my God, or we're all going to die, or what do you think?
No. I think there'll be a lot of excitement, and there'll be great headlines everywhere, and I think your program will probably come on the air.
Yeah, one of the first, no doubt. Adair, hold on, please. We're at a break here at the top of the hour. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about time. You may recall at the beginning of the program, I told you all that we are being attacked virtually by the sun right now. That our sun is throwing particles at us as a result of some really major flares. I mean, we're just having some incredible flares right now. I just looked at the A index, which is 34. The K index is 5. We're having a major geomagnetic storm. And I told the network folks at the beginning of the program that there had been satellite dropouts on TV, and we're more of a narrow band than TV, and that we could have dropout problems on our own. And sure enough, I got a call during the break saying, hey, we were off for 90 seconds. We lost the satellite for 90 seconds. Then I got another call just as we came out of break saying, well, hey, you're off. You're not on at all. And so I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to roll some music. Let me know when we're back on. And that's what I did. And here we are back on. And I'm telling you right now that what we're experiencing, almost certainly, I just checked the uplink numbers and looked at everything, and everything's just fine. We're transmitting fine. But we're being bombarded so hard from the sun right now, and there are some who will say, well, the sun's not out. How can that be? You see, the sun erupts, and then the Earth gets hit later. In other words, the sun spits, and 90 million miles later, 91 million miles later, we get hit. And we're being hit right now with this very large geomagnetic storm. So that had us off the air, and for all I know, we could come and go some more. But that's the situation. So if you noticed a discontinuity in the radio program for 90 seconds, and then as we came back, that's what's going on, folks. Certainly, that's the best guess. We will notice some power interruptions, and certainly the power grids across the U.S. are being affected by what's going on right now. And as I told you at the beginning of the program, you're going to want to watch for aurora, which could appear in the night sky. Usually you're going to watch the northern skies, depending on where you are, possibly even the southern skies. Even as far south a latitude as we're in here in the desert, we were able to see blood red skies just a few years ago when we had a similar development. But to have that in the middle of cycle 23 right now is just astounding. I mean, what's going on with the sun right now is absolutely astounding. And the dropouts you heard in the program are due to exactly that. Incredible phenomena here in the middle of the night. So let's see if Adair Butchins is still there. Are you there, Adair?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Remarkable events really going on right now in the world. We're experiencing a gigantic geomagnetic storm.
Not my fault.
Well, no, I'm not blaming this one on you. Don't worry about it. But it is an amazing thing, actually, to observe, Adair. Just a couple of things that I want to cover in our interview before we continue, and one of them is time. I wanted to ask you, since we're talking about such large issues as the Big Bang, the nature of the universe, the nature of whether of a creator, if there is one, and all the rest of it, then a very good question with regard to parallel universes and physics and what we believe right now is time. I wonder if you have any comments on the nature of time. Do you think time is merely a man-manufactured thing that we watch, or do you think that there's more to the nature of time that we understand, that someday man will be able to perhaps move within the time stream, either forward or in reverse? Or is this just something that we made up and we watch clocks tick, and so it's really time is just our invention?
Well, it's an interesting question because time is part of the whole construct of space-time.
Yes.
Space has 3 dimensions, and time is another dimension. By the way, before I carry on, you have my book there, do you?
I do, in front of me.
Well, if you want to check on that report to the Royal Astronomical Society, if you look at the bibliography under Steel, you'll have the reference, and you can get yourself a copy of the magazine.
All right. Under Steel, huh?
Yes, and the bibliography.
Okay. Very good. Steel, Duncan.
Right. Yes, time is looked upon as one of the dimensions of space. Now, what is interesting is that there's a theory, it's only a mathematical theory, by Stephen Hawking, that the universe did not actually have to have a beginning. And what he does is he takes the the problem of the Big Bang, and he goes right to what he calls the instanton, the beginning of the universe, and he goes to imaginary time. Now, when you take this becomes a bit mathematical. I'll try and explain it simply. When you take the coordinates of where anybody is, that tells people where we are in time and in space.
Yes.
Time has a quantity called I in front of it, which is the square root of -1. This all comes out in the mathematical equation. I won't try and explain it, certainly not over the telephone. But Hawking says that right at the beginning of time, time itself becomes imaginary. By imaginary, I don't mean something that you just imagine. Imaginary means something multiplied by the square root of -1.
Would you have imagined, Adair, that there was time prior to the Big Bang? Or in other words, there was space, but there was nothing in it. Then we had the Big Bang, and there were things, and you could measure momentum and movement, one object against another, and then calculate the passage, or see the passage of time. But prior to any physical being, there could be no time as we understand it.
No, I don't think there was any time before, but to go back to Hawking, he maintains that the quantum fluctuations right at the beginning of the universe, he has time going into imaginary quantity. It becomes multiplied by the square root of -1. When you fit that into the Einstein equations of special relativity, you suddenly find that time, the 3 dimensions of space and one of time, become 4 dimensions of space, and time vanishes. And so the universe wouldn't have any beginning. It would just be there. It would just exist. And then you get the fluctuation. Time would come in later on. This is basically Hawking's mathematical idea. That there's no actual proof of it. There are certain things it can predict, which seems to work out. But this is one idea of time, that the universe itself didn't actually have a beginning. It just existed. And now I realize this is rather a difficult sort of a concept to get over on the telephone.
Well, I don't know.
Am I being very obscure? I'm sorry.
No. Concepts are made for this kind of ability to communicate, Adair, so don't worry about it. This is exactly what radio is for, so we can explore these concepts. Do you embrace that? Do you agree with Hawking?
Well, not really.
Not really.
No, because Penrose is another great mathematician. States that he believes he actually believes in the Big Bang. But the trouble is, nobody really knows what went on with the Big Bang. What we do have is a theory of inflation, which is also quite interesting, which can take us back to the steady state universe again. Now,
I just thought it took us back to the Carter administration. Listen, I've got a lot of people that want to talk to you and ask questions, and so I've dominated you. Let me bring in a few callers and let's see what they ask you. All right?
Okay,
all right, good. On the wild card line, you're on the air with Adair Butchins and Art Bell. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Wild card line, you're on the air. Are you there? Going once. Going twice, gone. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Adair Butchins. Hello.
Yes, good morning. This is Eric in Niagara Falls, New York, and you're coming through loud and clear.
Good. I take it that you heard the slight disruption that we had there.
90-second dropout overlaid by a Nori interview came in vocally and came on very well. Happened twice during the interview.
Really strange stuff, but that's from our son, I would wager.
Yeah.
At any rate, sir.
Worse than skip distance.
Yeah.
I have a question for Dr. Butchins.
Well, I don't think yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Regarding the concept of increasing entropy or decreasing order,
yes.
I'm not a physicist by profession or training, but several years ago I've been very intrigued by the question. I consulted with a specialist in the area of low-temperature metaphysics at the local university. I was working on the philosophy of the problem. I was told that the concept of entropy is only valid cosmologically within a closed system. Could you please comment on the current status of that concept and on what thinkers like Ilya Prigogine and other theorists currently believe about the status of the universe as a closed or open system? And I do have a follow-up question.
Well, in fact, you couldn't get... the idea of closed or open universe, let's not get confused. between whether the universe is hyperbolic or ellipsoid. This is a different kind of closed and open. But the universe, there's nothing more closed than the universe. It is a completely closed system. There's nothing,
regardless of its geometry?
There's nothing extraneous coming into the universe. This is what it means by a closed system.
Okay.
In other words, if you pour hot water onto ice, the ice will melt. You won't get more ice forming and the water getting even hotter unless you have a refrigerator or a kettle suddenly put in there. So what it means is that entropy always increases in a closed system, and the universe is completely closed. There's nothing coming in from outside the universe to change it. Unless, of course, you believe that God is going to do it.
Well, my follow-up question concerns what amount of experimental evidence is there to support the concept that the universe is indeed closed, or is that endemic to the nature of the two geometries you mentioned? Does it have to be closed?
It's complete. Are you talking now about geometry or about entropy?
Well, the two different, you mentioned the ellipsoid or the hyperbolic.
Yes.
I guess you're talking about like Riemannian manifolds and so on with the...
Yes.
Is it necessary, I guess I'm saying, like a proposition that the universe is considered closed no matter what geometry might prevail?
No. The universe is only closed if the geometry is ellipsoid. If the geometry is hyperbolic, the universe is open and infinite.
And
also, if it's exactly critical, in other words, if there's neither hyperbolic nor ellipsoid, it's called flat, and it still becomes infinite and expands forever.
And would the balance of current experimental data indicate that it was indeed closed, like you said, the hyperbolic?
No, it indicates that it is open, and that is hyperboloid, because the universe is actually accelerating. Its expansion is actually accelerating.
Yeah.
Indicates an open infinite universe.
Is there not some contrary data to that?
All right, we'll have to hold it there. I bet you're going to find out there is. Is there not some contrary data?
No, all the evidence, even... I'm not talking, this is the latest one using supernovas, but certainly all the latest measurements from people, scientists concerned, have always produced a critical density a density less than the critical density. They've all indicated an open universe of one sort or another.
Okay.
And there seems to be no evidence that the universe is in fact closed.
All right.
And something may turn up, I don't know. But at the moment, all the observations, both galaxy counts and major galaxies in the clusters and so on, and also the cosmic microwave background, all suggest that the universe is open.
Okay, perhaps time for one quick one. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Adair Butchins. Hello.
Good morning, Mr. Butchins and Art.
Good morning.
Hi.
It's great to hear you both.
Thank you.
The crew from Undernet Coast to Coast chat room sends a huge hello.
A huge hello back.
Mr. Butchins, I understand that the universe is expanding and that it's growing faster and faster.
That is the latest observation.
Yes, this reminds me of gravity, like things falling towards Earth. Well, my question is, what do you think we're expanding towards?
We're not expanding towards anything. We're just expanding. And it's rather difficult. We talk about the size of the universe and so on. We're talking about the observed universe, the universe that we could observe from the Big Bang to the present day, which is as far as light could travel. But of course, the universe is infinite. It has always been infinite, but it's still spanning. It's a very difficult concept to grasp, that a universe that was very dense is infinite, and it's expanding, and it's still infinite. It doesn't expand into anything. Space itself is expanding. I'm sorry if this sounds obscure, but...
Well, it's not obscure. It's very hard to grasp.
Yes.
It's very hard to grasp, but I don't know about obscure. All right, hold on. Hold it right there, please. Book is The Numinous Legacy by Adair Butchins. I bet that you could probably get it at your favorite online or offline bookstore. It's probably everywhere. Is it mostly everywhere now, Adair?
Yes, I think it's at Barnes & Noble and...
yeah, all the usual suspects.
But it's certainly on Amazon.
Amazon.com, of course. All right.
Yeah.
Very good. All right, back to the phones. Many people wait. First-time caller line, you're on the air with Adair Butchins. Hello.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, I'm calling from Arkansas. I'm on my way from Tennessee.
Okay.
Earlier in the program, you had mentioned that you believe that there is a parallel universe of consciousness that intersects with the physical.
That's right.
Yes.
Is that correct? But at the same time, you don't believe in the power of prayer?
That's quite right. I wouldn't say I believe exactly. I postulated an idea of a parallel universe, but no, I don't think any real result.
Oh boy, are you about to get an example? Okay,
No,
ma'am.
not an example. I'm not going to give an example, but I'm going to ask a question. Is the human body basically water and electricity and carbon?
That is basically what the human body is constructed of. But we have this consciousness, which is incredibly interesting and amazing.
Right. And is it not possible that the consciousness controls the electricity, and when we direct that electricity, now I'm not saying necessarily to God or anything, but if we decide something in our mind and we quote unquote pray for it, we're directing that electrical energy that we ourselves contain to make something happen.
You're talking about free will now.
No.
No, I'm not talking about free will. I'm talking about specific saying this is going to happen and willing it to happen.
Yeah, she's talking about exactly the same thing I was talking about earlier, Adair. That is.
Oh yes.
The projection of it, and you can mix it up with prayer if you want to. It's really
that's what I call it.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Thank you, dear. It's the same thing, and there are, and I would suggest some reading to you, Adair, with regard to the experiments going on at Princeton. I mean, we all like science with respect to this. It's kind of hush-hush stuff to some degree, but it is in fact going on. There have been a number of studies, very scientific studies, about the power of prayer. Some of those I would imagine you'd be aware of or would have heard of, using control groups and that sort of thing. In what manner would you dismiss those?
Well, the one I've heard of is the one given by Stannard, in which you have a control group who are being prayed for and another group that wasn't being prayed for.
Yeah.
Well, I would discount that entirely. This is not quite the same as trying to make things happen by your will, by your electricity.
Why is it not the same?
Well, because this is a prayer to God, to an outside being. And, of course, God, if God does exist, as they say he does, and omnipotent and omniscient, he'd know all about these control groups anyway, so it's not really...
Yeah, but she was really stepping away from the word prayer and was suggesting that a force, an electrical force or an electromagnetic force or something perhaps we don't fully understand yet, it can be projected, perhaps even in a mass way, to get something done. And, people attach the word prayer to it, that's fine. We can leave it off for the sake of this discussion. How do you know there is not a force capable of being projected beyond the physical?
Well, I don't know. But of course, obviously, the evidence I can't prove. I don't know. It comes to a matter of faith. I mean, in science, we have faith that we believe in the evidence.
So, science doesn't really like faith. Faith means believing in something that you cannot prove.
Believing in something that you know isn't true.
Yeah, that's right. Science, on the other hand, really likes proving things, and it likes repetitive experiments that yield the same results time after time.
Yes, but it does rely on the faith that we can believe the evidence of our senses.
Oh, yes, indeed.
And that is faith, because we can't prove that the outside world is exactly as our senses say it is. but it's a reasonable position to take, and also our evolutionary survival depends on the fact that the outside world is at least approximately as we see it is. But that is definitely the faith of science, that we have faith that we do believe the evidence of our senses, when we can't prove it, because we can't climb outside of our mind.
Yeah, a lot of people have faith in science, perhaps misplaced. Wildcard line, you're on the air with Adair Butchins. Hello.
Hello?
Yes, sir. Hi.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Well, that's you and I saying hello, Adair. We're trying for a third person here. Hello there. Are you there?
Yes.
Oh, you are there. Good. Where are you?
I'm in New Iberia, Louisiana.
All right, sir. You're on the air.
By saying parallel universes, aren't you saying extra dimensions also?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's another way to look at it. Sure.
By saying God, you said God doesn't intervene in man's affairs.
That's what he said.
How do you know he doesn't intervene? I mean,
all right.
Just because there is bad in the world, how do you know that?
That he's not doing it as well as the good?
Because if you don't believe, maybe he's not doing it, so you can comprehend it.
All right. A crutch, Adair. Is it a crutch?
Yes, I should think so, because there doesn't seem to be any evidence that God has come down and intervened, or that God has intervened in any way. It's in the scriptures, but there doesn't seem to be any definite proof of intervention. I mean, we're going back to disease.
Well, of course, as you mentioned in the scriptures, I mean, we have the Red Sea parting. That seemed to be a little unusual, and, a few other...
Yes. But you had Jesus as the incarnation of God curing people with diseases.
Yes, you did. Which
is rather strange, because presumably God made these diseases in the first place. And then he comes in as an incarnation and cures some of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of a bit like the head of the mafia throwing £5 or $5 into a charity for fallen women.
Well, that was Adair's analogy, folks, not mine. And he's across the sea, where you can't get to him now anyway. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Adair Butchins. Hello.
Oh, great show, Art. I really appreciate it. 3 quick questions for your guest, but first I have an idea for a line tomorrow night. How about reserving a amateur astronomer line?
Alex, I see it. It's coming. Maybe. We'll see.
Okay. 3 quick questions. If the Virgo supercluster, our supercluster, is 180 million light years across, and you shrink that down to the size of your thumbnail, now, does that mean the universe is, say, the size of your average suburban house lot? and a second question, if you have these superclusters, and you were talking about observing their magnitude and distance, can you observe for the amount of matter in the universe? Can you observe through the superclusters and get an accurate count? Third question, if it's 15 billion years old...
You know what, you better pause and take some of the answers here.
One more question.
Nevertheless, sir, pause. Take some of the answers.
Okay.
Adair?
Oh, yes. As far as clusters are concerned, we have done... In fact, I myself have observed and taken galaxy counts as well as I can. There's an awful lot of problems doing it, but I have done it observing on the Schmidt telescope at Mount Palomar, and that also gave an effect that the universe was open. And what was the first question? Sorry.
If our supercluster, the Virgo supercluster, is 180 million light years across.
Oh, yes.
You shrink that down to the size of your thumbnail.
Yeah.
And does that mean the universe is about the size of your average suburban house lot?
Well, no, but when we get back to the Big Bang, what we're talking about now is the observable universe.
Uh-huh.
And as we go back in time towards the Big Bang, that shrinks and shrinks and shrinks and becomes dense and denser. But this is the part of the universe that, in theory, we could observe.
Mm-hmm.
All the rest of the universe is still there. It's not the whole universe itself that's shrinking down. It's that part of it that we can see.
Okay.
That's what people talk about, the size of the universe. They mean the size of the observable universe. The universe is infinite. All the whole mass of the universe will still be there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's easier to look at the size of the observable universe to be able to tell people or explain exactly what is happening.
Well,
so, yes,
that's a good lead-in to my third question, which is, if we can observe 15 billion light years, would that mean, would one suspect that there's another 15 billion light years that we can't? Or
well, one would, from the observations, one would suspect that there is an infinite number of light years that we can't yet. But every second we can. This is only in principle. This is not real observing with telescopes, because there are too many factors limiting our observation. But in principle, we can see as far as light has traveled from the Big Bang, and every second it's traveling another 186,000 miles.
Adair, here's one for you.
Yeah.
In Arizona, a very good place to observe the cosmos from. Arizona's thin air, kind of like here in Nevada. And so mountaintops in Arizona are great places to put large observatories. And in fact, the Catholic Church from Rome pushed right past all kinds of environmental mountains and molehills and bureaucracy and red tape, and by God, the Catholics got themselves an observatory in Arizona that you just couldn't believe. What do you think the Catholics are down in Arizona looking for, Adair?
I think they are looking for the study of the universe. They're looking for galaxies. They're looking for stars. They're examining astrophysics. I think they're doing the same as all other scientists.
Why?
But they have a...
Why? But why? I mean, they should, according to Scripture, they should know exactly what's going on. Why the need to be looking into the cosmos?
I don't think the Christianity or Catholicism claims to know everything about the physical universe.
Okay.
I think it claims to know everything about the spiritual universe.
Well, if the Catholics one day, staring through the eyepiece, saw something that contradicted everything they believe, what do you think they would do with that information?
They wouldn't accept it. People don't accept things they don't want to believe.
Well, that's the truth.
In 9/11, there was a lot of Muslims believe that it was done by the Jews, because they didn't want to believe it was done by the Muslims.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's
many people will not believe something they do not want to believe.
Well, you're quite right about that. All right, West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Adair Butchins and Art Bell. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning. There you are. Okay.
Yes, my name is Walter. I'm in Eatonville, Washington. And
hello, Walter.
Hello, Mr. Butchins. I'd like to ask you about the ascension thing you were talking about. I mean, I don't see why science can't figure that out, since it seems like science is on the path of beaming people up into space, and the only drawback I can see from it, or people might not like, is that I could think I'm a messenger of God and want to kill everybody and arrange the meeting of God that way, and everybody gets to ascend into heaven. You know, I mean, that's the only thing I can't see why you seem like you're down on the ascension, that people can't just leave the planet and ascend and meet God. You know, I mean, except maybe.
Well, to leave the planet, one can leave the planet in a rocket, of course, providing you go 25,000 miles an hour, which is the speed necessary to resist the Earth's gravity.
Escape velocity.
I don't think heaven, in the particular sense that the Scripture puts it, actually exists. As a matter of fact, C.S. Lewis wrote a book in which he quoted the Russians saying that they'd been into space and they haven't met God or seen heaven.
Let's get right down to a hard question, Adair. What about the human soul? Do you think there is something that we traditionally understand to be the human soul? I would rather imagine you don't think that, do you?
Well, so far there's been generally biologists don't believe it. Richard Dawkins certainly doesn't believe there's a human soul.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, we have the mystery of consciousness and identity.
Mm-hmm.
No one understands that. Also, people have had various ideas, but no one really understands that. Now, Stannard considers that the human soul developed evolutionary with the human being. Now, I couldn't think of any survival value for the human soul, but then I thought, well, free will, for instance, seems to have come from an evolutionary point of view. I mean, presumably insects don't have free will; they just react to various events. But as you go up the intelligence ladder with animals, you become more and more free will, because free will becomes very useful both to the victim and the predator.
To the degree, actually, that in some mammals, particularly those that we keep as household pets, for example, there appears to be so much free will and identity that one might as easily assign the concept of a soul, if that's what it is, to an animal as one does to a human.
Yes, that's right. Stannard considers it evolutionary, but it could, of course, if the soul does exist, it could easily have evolved in concert with free will. Because I cannot believe that without there's no free will, there's no soul, as far as I can see. You're just reacting to events. But as free will has come into being evolutionary, it is possible, as Stannard says, that a soul could have evolved with it. Now, I'm not stating that, but it is a possibility, and I respect people that accept that.
All right, we're almost out of time. Let me squeeze one more in here. Hello there. On the wildcard line, you're on the air with Adair Butchins and Art Bell. Not a lot of time here.
Hi, this is Steve in Santa Fe, Missouri.
Hey, Steve.
I'm a retired telephone cable line troubleshooter, and so I've got I'll just have to email you with some answers on the fantastic array you've built.
I'll look forward to that.
Some real familiar stuff to me. Electricity does exist in the ether.
This is one of those things you just wouldn't believe unless you saw, and that's why I put the photographs up. Do you have any quick questions?
I've seen it before. Yeah, I do. I would just like to observe that this continual denial of the creative force, or even though we admit there is this possibility of it in the design, if the universe is expanding, and our guest knows this, then why is that not considered change? And why the assumption that the Creator isn't making that change? That's question number one.
Well, that's a really good one. Actually, it's the only one we'll have time for. Adair?
Well, one can assume that if the Creator, a God, exists, then he is causing the universe to expand, and eventually we'll all end up in the heat death. What is normally thought of as a creator is that he is eventually going to cause complete change of universe, and we're going to get a judgment day and the resurrection of the dead, and that would be an arbitrary change of the universe.
All right. Adair, you know what? We're out of time. Now that I've gotten to know you, we could do much more, and maybe one day we'll get an opportunity to do that. In any case, the Numinous Legacy is on sale now, wherever you probably buy your books, and I would suggest that you might want to know more about what this man thinks and believes, because he's fascinating. Adair, thank you for being here. We got to go.
Thank you very much for introducing me to your program.
You have a great day there in Great Britain. Good night.
Say good night. Thank you.